It's a giant conspiracy from Greg Sankey specifically against Hugh Freeze and Auburn because they're based in Birmingham and run by a cabal of Alabama boosters in an underground bunker. I'm just throwing this out.
Wait, I thought they were run by Tennessee boosters.
No, it's always been the tie.
Yeah, they're harvesting children's
remember the
blood.
Albert Means case? That was all Tennessee conspiracy.
Yes, and they're using seed oils to control the SEC. Okay, guys, look, do your research.
Hey, it's Andy. No Godfrey, no Ross, because we had already recorded Sunday's episode, and then Godfrey got on a plane, and Ross, well, you'll see. Ross is in his sickbed right now, but a lot has gone down in the intervening time. The show was about to get posted, and we said, hold up. We actually literally said stop the presses, which I've never gotten to say. Like, I worked for an actual newspaper, and I never got to say stop the presses. But this was a stop the presses moment because Penn State fired James Franklin. And on its surface, it seems extreme. I mean, here's a guy who wins at a very impressive clip, double-digit wins just about every year. Up until the last 2 weeks, he was a guy who won the games he was supposed to win. He didn't always win the games he wasn't supposed to win, and that was kind of the problem. The sarcastic nickname he was given was Big Game James because he would not beat the top 10, top 5 teams when he played them, but he would beat everybody else. And so that's the issue. The last 2 weeks, he's lost to UCLA, he's lost to Northwestern. Those were both 20-point underdogs with a team, mind you, that was predicted to win the national title, was a Big Ten favorite going into the season. This was the betting odds favorite to win the national title in the preseason. They brought back a ton of players from a team that made it to the national semifinal last year that had the ball driving to potentially win that semifinal and play for the national title. It is difficult to enumerate the ways that things have gone wrong for Penn State this year. But this is a man who's been coaching Penn State since 2014. He's 104-45, 64-36 in Big Ten play. It's a very good record. It's not good enough, though, for a program that aspires to win national titles, because the problem with James Franklin is that he was being propped up by the fact that he won all the games he was supposed to win, which is a difficult skill to attain for a college football coach. It's not an easy thing to do. The thought was he'd keep winning the games he was supposed to win, and then eventually he breaks through and starts winning against the really good teams, because this year, it felt like he finally had a roster that matched the talent of an Oregon, of an Ohio State. Whether that's true or not is another story. I think if we look at what happens to this roster, where these guys go in the NFL draft, I think we're going to find out it is a very talented roster, but this particular roster does not play well together. They just lost Drew Aller, their quarterback, for the season. I don't know how much that changes anything. I don't think it made any impact on the decision to fire James Franklin. I think that was going to happen one way or the other. They had basically lost the game when Drew Aller got hurt. So I don't know what happens next there. It'll be a very sought-after job. Since Pat Kraft has been there as the AD, they got a new president in 2022. They've been very willing to spend on football. Penn State was not always a school. It's interesting because during all the Joe Paterno stuff, people said, "Oh, they'll do anything for football." But really, over the last 10 years or so, Penn State has not been a program that has said we will financially commit to trying to win national titles at football. It wasn't until about 2022 that started happening. Ohio State was saying that, Oregon was saying that, Alabama was saying that, LSU, Georgia, those programs were saying it. Penn State was not saying it, but Penn State has been saying that recently, and I think that's part of the reason that this move got made, is they are committing to this, and they need somebody who can give them what they want. Now, the buyout is enormous, and I think we should look at this and say all these other enormous buyouts that we think are impossible. Florida State, Mike Norvell, Wisconsin, Luke Fickell. Everything's on the table now. Mark Stoops at Kentucky. All of it's on the table. So if you're a coach who's underperforming and you got a big buyout, you should worry. Now, you shouldn't worry much because they're going to pay you to not work. But one thing about this particular buyout So I just mentioned Mark Stoops at Kentucky. Mark Stoops' buyout is $37 million. It is less than James Franklin's by more than $10 million, but it is less manageable than James Franklin's because Mark Stoops' buyout has no offset language. Like, it doesn't matter if he gets another job, he still gets to keep all the money. And it's all due within 30 days. James Franklin's buyout is payable between now and 2031 in equal installments. They owe him about $8 million a year. And if he gets another job, there is what's called a duty to mitigate, which means the salary from the duty to mitigate means you're supposed to try to get another job. He will get another job. He may take a year off, but James Franklin's not washed. He's still a pretty good coach. And I think if he lands at another program, he can do a good job for that program. So I do think there will be a market for his services, whether that's this year or next year if he takes a year off. And so if James Franklin lands a job as a head football coach, probably at a power conference that pays him $4 million a year, $5 million a year, that comes off the tab for Penn State. So if he gets a $5 million a year job, your $8 million mortgage payment to fire James Franklin becomes a $3 million a year mortgage payment to fire James Franklin. Very manageable for a school in the Big Ten right now. Very manageable. So it's a huge number on its face. It is not necessarily that big of a number. So remember that. Also, what next? Who do you hire? This is the key. You got to hire somebody who could be better than James Franklin. And allow me to read you the records of James Franklin's Penn State teams the previous 3 seasons. 11-2, 10-3, 13-3. You fired James Franklin. You have to hire somebody who's going to be better than that. So who's it going to be? I think the name most minds will immediately jump to is Matt Rule at Nebraska, who's doing very well at Nebraska right now. They've only got 1 loss. They look like second-tier Big Ten team, which is not what Penn State aspires to be, but what Nebraska needed. That's a logical step in Nebraska's progression from where they were under Scott Frost. So they're second-tier Big Ten team. If they keep playing well, they have a chance to be a playoff contender in November. They do. They had a really good comeback win against Maryland on Saturday. They're one to watch. And Matt Rule is a Penn State grad. He was a walk-on linebacker under Joe Paterno. It's a mama called situation. So if you think Nebraska would just automatically pony up, pay a bunch of money, and Matt Rule stays, it's a little more complicated than that. But also, maybe he's not necessarily the top candidate, although I will say, pre-existing relationship with Pat Kraft, the athletic director. Pat Kraft used to be the AD at Temple. Matt Rule was the head coach at Temple. Those two worked really well together. So that's an obvious name. Another obvious name, Matt Campbell at Iowa State. Not a lot of places Matt Campbell would leave Iowa State for. He likes it in Ames. He does not like a lot of BS. He's not really been that interested in quote-unquote bigger jobs. But the thought was always, if a super premium Big Ten job came open, and by super premium, there's only 3, Penn State, Ohio State, Michigan, that if one of those jobs came open, that's something he might be interested in. So maybe. Here's another one in the Big Ten. Curt Cignetti. Curt Cignetti at Indiana. Now, could you get him away from Indiana? Indiana's going to try to pay whatever it takes to keep him. But Curt Cignetti, in 2 years, has proven that he can take a team that is not doing well and make it great. And on Saturday, he did the thing that James Franklin has really not been able to do. He went to Oregon. He beat the Ducks. So everybody who said, "Oh, Indiana is not that great. It's just a product of their schedule. When they play a real team, they're not going to beat them." Oh, no. They kicked Oregon's ass. It wasn't fluky at all. So Curt Cignetti, worth a call. Got to try, right? Got to call. I'll give you another name. Clark Lee at Vanderbilt. Now that's another one. It's a tricky one because you're trying to get him out of his alma mater. But what he's done at Vanderbilt, and I realize James Franklin came from Vanderbilt when he went to Penn State. But James Franklin won 9 games 2 years in a row at Vanderbilt, which is something that Clark Lee hasn't actually been able to do yet. But Clark Lee's version of Vanderbilt is as competitive or more competitive in the SEC than James Franklin's was. And you've seen Clark Lee do it in a different time. And you've seen how well He's adapted. Also, he'd bring Tim Beck, the offensive coordinator, who's one of the brightest minds in the game. He would not bring Diego Pavia, I don't think. Diego Pavia could sue for a 7th year and maybe play QB at Penn State, but I don't think he'd do that. One more name. Brent Key at Georgia Tech. This is another guy who's at his alma mater right now, so you got to be a little careful. But watch Georgia Tech play and tell me you wouldn't love that style at Penn State. Great on both lines of scrimmage, tough as hell, great at getting the most out of their talent, and then you just have more talent. Okay, one more. I'm sorry. I get carried away. One more. How about Fran Brown at Syracuse? Jersey guy, fantastic recruiter in the Northeast. You give him all the resources at Penn State, that dude's going to make you a national championship roster. And you've seen how well he coached what he had at Syracuse so far. He's a young coach. He's only in his 2nd year as a head coach, but he's a star. So just think about those names and get ready. Strap in, because James Franklin got fired Sunday. There's a lot more to come. There's going to be a lot of job openings this year. Florida's still got Billy Napier. Wisconsin still got Luke Fickell. Kentucky still got Mark Stoops. All of those could be on the table very soon. Bunch of others, depending on how the season goes, could be on the table. We could be talking upward of 15, 16, 17 power conference openings. When a domino like this falls, everything gets wild. So we'll see what happens. But now, enjoy the rest of the show with Godfrey and Ross. This is the College Football Inquirer. I am Andy Staples. He is Ross Dellenger. He is Steven Godfrey. Steven Godfrey is playing the role of Ross Dellenger today with the backward hat. Ross Dellenger, he's playing hurt. He's grinding through this one. Gentlemen, we were all up very late last night because there was a lot going on. But I want to talk about 2 games that happened in the afternoon in the Big Ten, because both have potentially big effects on the sport in very different ways. The first one I want to talk about, the most joyous news of the day for one particular team, that is Indiana going to Oregon and beating the Ducks. Not squeaking by the Ducks, not doing anything fluky. The Hoosiers went and straight up beat Oregon, which won the Big Ten last year, which was 13-0 going into the playoff last year, which had all the talent in the world. Curt Cignetti told us this was going to happen. No one believed him. We kept saying it was because of the schedule. Now, I believe all of those complaints about Indiana are dead, I think.
We officially played somebody.
Yes.
This is it.
They played somebody, Paul.
This is look, it's a joke, but it's also been probably one of the most prevalent arguments in college football over the last 2 seasons. It's also been one of the most annoying, and now it's officially dead. I don't know where you want to go first on this, Andy, but there is no way to justify this or to take the flowers away from the Hoosiers. This is an intimidating environment, a top 5 team, yada, yada, yada. That's dead. That's done. We can stop now, right? This is maybe the second best, if not an argument for the best team in the league.
Yes, and an argument for possibly the best team in the country. Now, that will settle itself, because at this point it feels like Ohio State and Indiana are on a collision course for the Big Ten championship game. There's a world where both of them enter that game at 12-0. Indiana, if you look at the remainder of their schedule, they are going to be favored in every game. Depending on what they're favored against Penn State by, they could be favored by double digits in every game. And so this team's a wagon. Like this is first of all, they're better than last year. You know, they didn't lose that much from last year, but the key loss was Curtis Rourke, the quarterback. They went and got Fernando Mendoza from Cal, and I would say they upgraded there. And that's no shot at Curtis Rourke. It's just that Fernando Mendoza is really very good. And they just are not intimidated by any of these environments. You know, Ross, last year they went to Ohio State and lost. They then had to play at Notre Dame in round 1 of the playoffs, and they lost. But the argument that Cignetti had, and you want to believe him here, is that, well, most teams would have lost in that situation last year. And that's probably true.
It is. And what was sort of, I guess it wasn't surprising to me that they won. It's at Oregon. It's kind of how they won. I mean, they really dominated the game. Like the 10-point margin of victory was sort of not indicative of how the game went. Oregon had a pick six and a big 44-yard touchdown pass, but gosh, outside of that, Indiana's defense won the line of scrimmage, and then offensively they outrushed Oregon, and they had more sacks, more tackles for loss. I mean, they just won up front, which Mario Cristobal before Dan Lanning and Dan Lanning now, they have really emphasized the lines there in recruiting sort of SEC caliber offensive defensive linemen, and for Indiana to go in there and sort of whip them up front was really, really incredible. I visited Indiana and Kurt Signetti maybe early November or so last year when they were on that run, 8-0 or whatever they were whenever they started, and met with the athletic director, Scott Dolson, and the sentiment there was this isn't just a one-season thing. I remember them wanting to get that across to me while I was there, is that this is going to be a permanent sort of situation at Indiana where we're going to win at football and we're going to invest at football despite having this basketball, right, sort of historic powerhouse basketball thing. We're going to invest and be good at football. And man, I mean, so far they are.
Mendoza
They
was,
are.
I was going to say, looking for exceptional quarterback play this season. I think we found Ty Simpson, right? We all feel like there's a consensus on Ty Simpson.
Yeah, I'd say he's the most exceptional, and we talk about what he did at Missouri too.
Yes, and also the separation in the league. But for Mendoza to throw the pick six, which I think kind of messes up. If you're just looking at the box score of this game, it doesn't really display what actually happened. But then to come back and have a very systematic 12-play, 75-yard drive for the touchdown. When he came back, it was as if he had not thrown the pick six, and they immediately regained the lead on the road in Autzen. I was like, that was watershed, I think, for Indiana. And as part of the statement was, not only are we not fraudulent, we have this moment of self-inflicted adversity on the road late, and we immediately regain control. We could talk about Georgia Auburn in a minute in terms of how bad teams and bad coaching staffs lose momentum. Indiana immediately erased the biggest error they could have committed, and that's what a really, really, really good program does.
Yeah, I'm
on the
glad
road
you brought that
against
up,
top 5 team, right?
Yeah.
You see that happen, and it's oh, here we
That's
go,
it.
right? They're going to lose this game. Surely they're going to lose this game, and it's pretty incredible.
Yeah, if I had told you that they will throw a pick six early in the fourth quarter that ties the game, you would assume that Oregon just seizes momentum, and that's how Oregon runs away with it. But that's exactly right. I was looking at the drive that Indiana embarked on immediately after that interception return for a touchdown. And, Roman Hemby, 2-yard run, and then immediately Mendoza has a 9-yard pass to Omar Cooper. You get your first down. Now you're moving. And Mendoza was he was dealing that whole time. And I don't think he threw an incomplete. Maybe threw one incomplete pass. Yeah, or 2 incomplete passes on that drive, but was sharp and confident and exactly what you needed in that moment. And so I have zero doubt that this team can play with anybody in the country. We can talk, if we want, about whether Ohio State has sort of separated itself from the rest of the country, but I don't know if they have. I just don't know if they've played the team that can challenge them yet. Indiana may be that team.
Yeah, no, Ohio State is probably still the best team in the country. It's very semantic to sort of do this week to week, and we know that, but people ask for it. They're winning games like America's best built garbage disposal. It's not particularly fun to watch, but it is inevitable that you will be
mushed
reduced.
Illinois on Saturday. It was people were cheering because Illinois became the first team to score a touchdown in the red zone against Ohio.
Right.
These are the stats you have to grasp for. when
Shout out to that
Illinois
Illinois punter. Shout out to that Illinois punter, my guy. I feel you. It was a low snap. It wasn't your fault, but he put his knee down to retrieve it, and so he essentially downs the play right there. that is a walk into the ocean moment, especially against Ohio State.
Yeah, the Ohio State defense. I had somebody there at the game I was talking to, and he was like, they do things defensively like I've never seen a college football defense do, like pre-snap and post-snap. And we've talked about that a little bit earlier this week with Caleb Downs. But yeah, they started the season 9 straight reds. An opponent had 9 consecutive red zone trips without it, and they didn't allow a TD, which was the most since 2010, by the way. So it's things we're seeing from them are pretty historic. I think some people would say that there's an argument to be made that Indiana should be like ranked ahead of Ohio State just because of the schedule that they played, just because of the wins they have.
Yeah.
But yeah, which is crazy, which seems
crazy.
Well, the
Texas win has a little more luster after yesterday.
Yeah, a little more luster because Texas went and thumped Oklahoma. And I think that's the thing. We're entering a period where we're going to see a lot of different teams evolve, and we're going to see a lot of different, before yesterday, Texas seemed to be on the downslope. Oklahoma seemed to be on the rise. Now we're looking at it, even though Oklahoma still has fewer losses than Texas, we're looking at it like Texas, hey, they might actually still be able to make the CFP. Oklahoma, I don't know if they can get through the rest of the schedule. And we're going to have these wild swings here in these next few weeks. But there was nothing wilder Saturday than what happened in State College, Pennsylvania. Because we all joked about it after Penn State lost to UCLA. But we kind of compartmentalized Penn State's loss to UCLA as they changed the offense on Tuesday at UCLA. They might have found the perfect offensive coordinator in Jerry Neuheisel. It's lightning in a bottle. It's never going to happen again. Well, first of all, UCLA went and destroyed Michigan State, so maybe Jerry Neuheisel is the future greatest offensive coordinator of all time. But Northwestern, which beat UCLA a couple weeks ago, and we transitive property that game as a joke, saying that means they're going to beat Penn State. No, Northwestern goes to State College and beats Penn State. And now what do you do with James Franklin?
I want to go back 2 weekends. We came out of the Penn State-Oregon game, and I think we kind of rallied around Penn State, Andy. I remember like coming on the Sunday morning show and saying this wasn't necessarily a loss that wrote any kind of obituary for Penn State because of the way they came back in that game, the way Aller looked, the pieces that they spent all the money for. To now have this conversation 2 football weekends later, I have absolutely no idea how we got here. UCLA is a hot hand. That's fine. Yesterday is wholly and totally inexcusable. And I know we can talk about the football parts of this game, but the money that was spent on that roster, on that field, now you guys can check this if it's hyperbole. I was discussing this with some friends last night. This has to be the most expensive mistake in the NIL rev share player payment era, because they're done, they're cooked, and the amount of money they spent, guys, not only on the pieces they brought in, but the pieces they kept, plus bringing in Jim Knowles, like a lot of cash was spent on retaining the roster that could have rolled over and gone to the NFL.
Right. No, it's and then on top of that, they're in year 1 of a 3-year, $700+ million stadium renovation.
Oh man,
it's the money being spent there and invested there is pretty insane, and it's kind of, to go back to Andy's point, it's why it's really a hard question to answer of what do you do with James Franklin, because he's won a lot of games there. His players seem to like playing for him. And he's got a $60 million buyout in it. And it strikes me as like the way his tenure, when you look at it, and I wrote this like maybe last year, is that he just kept losing to his biggest rivals, right? Every year, pretty much.
Right.
But this year, it's different, and it reminds me, of course, of when I covered Les Miles at LSU. And for the first 8 to 10 years, Les pretty much mainly only lost to his biggest rivals, right? Alabama had that long streak and all that stuff. But then late in less his tenure, he started to lose other games. And it got to the point where they didn't have a choice. And it sort of feels like that. It doesn't feel as bad, but it's we're getting to that level. And I don't know that they can afford to drop what they did on the coaching staff, the roster, the stadium stuff in James Franklin, unless, of course, they happen to get, part of a $2.4 billion equity capital infusion in the Big Ten.
Well, part of the problem there, that comp is completely accurate, Ross, except for the fact that Les Miles won a national title in 2007. Yeah. And Penn State remains on that kind of second level bridesmaid status.
But Les, it is a good comparison, and I had not thought of that comparison. I'm glad you brought it up, Ross.
Mark Richt.
Yeah,
Mark Richt.
It's a plateau situation. And so the Mark Richt thing, that there were a couple moments in that 2015 season. I remember talking to Greg McGarity, the former Georgia athletic director, about there were a few moments like when they panicked and started Fatan Bauta against Florida, which, by the way, the offensive coordinator who was involved in that is now the head coach of the Dallas Cowboys. And like, if I ever cover a Cowboys game, I will only ask about Fatan Bauta. But they did that. And then they also had a game late that season where they played Georgia Southern, had to beat them in overtime, and were celebrating like they'd won the Super Bowl.
Yeah, Willie Fritz team.
Yeah. And that was another moment. I think they'd already made the decision at that point, but that was yet another moment that reinforced, hey, this will never get us where we want to be. And that's the thing with Franklin. So I've consulted the Lord of the buyout, my On3 coworker, Pete Nakos, who has every coach's buyout at his fingertips. We're actually getting the Franklin buyout wrong, and I'm guilty of this too.
Okay.
It is $48.6 million. Now,
okay,
still a ton of money. And
it
basically drops by.
In that case,
yeah. You're going to shave $10 million off of that. Well,
dude,
okay.
it's 10% off that Bugatti. How could you
not? The Mike Norvell buyout at Florida State is $57 million. That's the one I'm getting those two confused. And that's all. But it's interesting because Norvell's kind of in that spot with Franklin too after they lost to Pitt.
Yeah.
And of course, neither of them can.
We jokingly talked about that one coming out of or going into Miami. I said, hey, it feels like they're going to lose to Miami. It's a wonky game. They did. And I said, man, it really makes that Pitt game a sort of sneaky must win. And now here we are at 3 in a row.
So I think the bigger conversation to have, and Norvell and Franklin, we can lump them together, and possibly Luke Fickell.
Yeah.
At Wisconsin, who lost 37-0 to Iowa. That feels like it's run its course. His buyout is in the high 20s, I believe, which not near what Franklin's is or what Norvell's is, but Wisconsin typically not the kind of place that has the stomach for this. Like when they fired Paul Chryst. Paul Chryst is the kind of guy that's like, hey, you don't have to give me how much you owe me. You could give me less if you'd like. And I just
the most Wisconsin neighborly,
Yes.
That's not going to happen this time, by the way.
Geez, I mean, you owe me 15, but
you guys keep it
11.
You guys keep. We'll share the snowblower. It's fine. It's like every other Thursday.
They're nice Midwesterners.
Yeah. Oh, crap. This is going to be a very strange next few weeks because on my On3 show, I had a commenter named Vance, Vance is very sharp and he comments on a lot of shows and usually is very insightful. And this one kind of hit me right between the eyes. He said, if you ask someone at Texas A&M right now, would they say they regret paying Jimbo Fisher's $77 million buyout?
Yeah. No. But it's just
not one bit.
It's only if you can actually manage that out. Right.
Well,
the other one, and by the way,
A&M is the perfect encapsulation of this because yes, they paid the buyout. Yes, they're happy they paid the buyout now, but they tried to hire Mark Stoops first.
Yeah.
Who, speaking of, by the way, is not necessarily this weekend, but is active in this conversation of, oh, we don't know if they can swallow that, and now we're looking at maybe 3 or 4 that felt impossible in August.
Yeah. So Matt Jones, the most connected guy in the state of Kentucky, he runs Kentucky Sports Radio. He told me last week, Kentucky does have the capability of paying Mark Stoops' buyout, which is the least manageable buyout of all of these. because it's due all within 30 days. It's roughly $37 million, due all within 30 days. And when Matt told me that last week, it shifted my thinking a little bit on these, because the Franklin one, the Norvell one, those are kind of installment plan buyouts. It's a very large mortgage payment. Basically, you keep paying as if you were paying the person. It's just a smaller percentage of their salary. And so the Stoops one, it is a giant lump sum within 30 days. If Kentucky is willing to ponder that, willing to even consider that, all of these other ones are on the table. All of them.
Especially in the Big Two, because of the revenue that is available or will be available in the short term. It's not so much the traditional passing of hats in the smoky back room as people think. It used to be, not so much.
Which is, it's crazy that we're talking about this. I mean, because all these buyouts, I think, would be the second biggest buyout. Any of these buyouts would be the second
behind
biggest
Jimbo
coaching
Fisher,
buyouts, right? Behind
the number two, the current number two, is $20.5 million Gus Malzahn in 2020 from Auburn.
Yeah, everyone's making Auburn look sane.
Well, and
how about
and
that?
Auburn may also fire its coach.
You know,
we got to get into that too.
But that's
His
bargain
is way
basement.
lower.
That's
This
bargain
is
basement,
normal.
man. Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's spread out over payments. Yeah. Hugh Freeze
Yeah.
just becomes a line item. That was just a bad vacation you took. You just got to pay that off. You didn't want to go to Sandals.
I had my honeymoon to Sandals.
I did too. It
was lovely.
It was just the first one in the joke. I promise. I'm not being elitist. Yeah, I did too.
It was lovely.
Yeah. I was young and broke, so it was great.
There you go. Yeah, I was 22. She was 21. But
Yeah,
hey, we're still
sports
married, so
journalism.
it didn't ruin the marriage.
Nope.
But wait, that's the different. That was there was a different resort, one named in Jamaica, that would have ruined the marriage.
Yeah.
So, but we've gotten conditioned to these things, and I feel like I'm conditioned even after seeing A&M happen to say, well, but yeah, that's it. That's the anomaly. It's never going to happen again. What I think may never happen again are these contracts.
Absolutely.
Yes.
That's
This is where
was
this is where I
the
wanted to
same
go.
thing.
Yeah.
Like, because I was thinking like, like, how is this happening all at once? It's like, yeah, because of this wave of crazy contracts that were offered to coaches between 2020, 2019-ish, 2020, somewhere around there.
It really hit
2020,
overdrive after the 21 season.
Yeah.
Where
the Lincoln Riley
Brian
goes
goes to USC.
right?
Brian
And
Kelly
before
goes
that,
to
James Franklin, I think that year or the year before, maybe that year as well.
Franklin's was in 21.
Franklin
The one he's
gins up.
currently under.
Yeah, he kicks up a little smoke
Yeah.
for his extension. I think that if we're playing historian for a second and we're all writing a book 10 years from now, Saban's retirement, because that's where Norvell gets his kick, right? Is renegotiating the deal after the undefeated season. I think Saban's retirement probably marks the end of this. I'm fascinated, and this is a question for people that are, their contacts in all of our phones. This is going to alter the business model fundamentally at all the major agencies. If you have a unified, I mean, it's almost like collusion on the part of every school in the Big Two to say, we're not doing these mega buyouts anymore.
Yeah.
I'm curious how much the revenue model or just sort of the business plan shifts at these major agencies.
Well, I can tell you what I think is going to happen, and I don't think the agencies are going to be as broken up about it as you think. What I think is going to happen, and I've had one person explain this to me, and then an athletic director kind of did it, and I thought it was very interesting. So, I have a Hollywood agent who listens to my On 3 show, and I was talking to him about this, and he explained to me that they had to change the way they paid actors when the streaming services came on board and when linear television began to decline. Because before, if you were doing a movie or you were doing a TV show, you factored in the fact that if it was a hit, there would be residuals, there would be syndication money, all this back end money that was available. But if you do a deal with Netflix, there's no back end money. Netflix buys it, they own it, and there's no residual. So what they had to do is they had to front load everything. They had to say, we'll take this much up front, and we know we're not getting anything on the back end. So you just got to pay more up front. And what this person said, because this person is a huge college football fan, understands all these contracts, said, what you need to do is pay more per year and guarantee far fewer years. And they use Billy Napier as the example. They said if you paid Billy Napier, if you had offered Billy Napier when he was at Louisiana Lafayette, coming to Florida, if you'd offered him $10 million a year, guaranteed for 3 years, Jimmy Sexton would have told him to take it because it's $10 million a year,
right? And he still and CAA still gets to wet their beak on the front deal,
right? But after 3 years, it's done. And if he's succeeding, you give him a new deal. Yeah. If he's not, you just let it expire. And you would have paid him $30 million. The University of Florida is going to pay Billy Napier significantly more than $30 million over the life of this deal and not get the results it wants. So this has actually been put into practice, and I don't think it was because this person listens to my show. I think it's because this person is pretty smart.
It's good business.
Yeah,
and Danny White. Do you think that's what's going to happen? You think that's going to start happening?
Yeah, Danny White at Tennessee did this with his basketball coach.
Here's what's funny. It's to Andy's suggestion or his source's suggestion. It's not the $10 million annual that kills you. It's starting them off at a lower per annual rate. And then when you have that micro bit of success, look, I'm talking about Jimbo, I'm talking about Malzahn. The crippling effect comes after, like, so Jimbo has that great COVID year, and they bump the deal up. The buyout becomes bigger. Malzahn has those two like most expensive wins in history, where he beats Georgia and Alabama, and then immediately loses the SEC championship game and gets the Kirby level deal on the extension. It's the second deal on these coaches. That look at Mark Stoops. That was actually the third,
there were some. Mark Stoops is bad. Mark Stoops on his 7th amendment to his contract, by the way.
Yeah.
There were some bad first deals too, but then like the Mel Tucker deal. It's basically when the agents get the ADs convinced that somebody else is coming, and the ADs are the thing. The ADs I think they're worst at is identifying when they only have a replacement level coach, because certain coaches, yes, you should overspend to keep Kirby Smart, Ryan Day, but almost everybody else you could just let go and you could find somebody just as good for cheaper. And like I'll go back to 2000. What year is it? Either 16 or 17. South Carolina has a pretty good year. They win 9 games. Oh, it must have been 16 because Malzahn was on the hot seat, and Jimmy Sexton convinced Ray Tanner at South Carolina that Will Muschamp was potentially going to leave for Auburn if Gus Malzahn got fired. And South Carolina put itself on the hook for millions more dollars that they ended up having to pay.
And when did they pay that out, Andy? They paid that
2020.
out in the middle of an athletic department revenue deficit of an estimated $40 million, I think I wrote at the time, for South Carolina. In other words, at the moment when they were, if not cash strapped in that moment, they were about to be in 21, and they did it anyway. They had to.
Yep.
They had to.
Andy, it reminds me too of Jimbo's extension before in 2021 LSU fired Orgeron that summer.
Oh yeah,
they gave Jimbo Fisher an extension because of just thinking that the LSU job would open.
Well,
and he would be Scott Woodward's first call, which he was Scott Woodward's first call.
yes.
So Scott Woodward was the AD at LSU. He had been the AD who had hired Jimbo at Texas A&M. He'd also been the AD who gave Jimbo a contract that had no buyout if Jimbo walked.
Yeah.
That essentially gave Jimbo all the leverage. So Scott was working with the contract he himself made and using that as a cudgel. Yeah. So it was crazy. Before we resume talking about buyouts, because it feels like that's all we're talking about today, we do need to talk about one team that feels a little bit snake bit, boys, when it comes to maybe they're zebra bit, because the Auburn Tigers against Oklahoma had a play where Oklahoma played the hide the receiver trick. I still don't understand why it's against the rules, but it is against the rules. The officials did not enforce the rule properly. The SEC was forced to admit that. They also admitted that they had disciplined the officials, but they did not say how or why, or they said why, but they did not say how. And Auburn, of course, gave up a touchdown on that play. It would have fundamentally changed that game. So fast forward to Auburn, Georgia. It is 10-0. Auburn leading Georgia. Jackson Arnold is diving. He's getting tush pushed over the goal line, essentially. And Now, a lot of people disagree on what they saw. I'm going to go with what I saw. You guys can tell me what you saw. It looks to me like the ball breaks the plane and then gets peanut punched out.
Yes.
It does
Agreed.
not appear to me that the ball is moving before it breaks the plane.
Yes.
So that would be a touchdown. Auburn leading 16-0, about to kick the extra point, not a fumble.
Yeah.
It was called a fumble on the field. It was reviewed. The call of fumble was upheld. Georgia football.
It was called a fumble on the field, but the play was blown dead. So the return
and the
was
Georgia
just,
fans mad the play was blown dead because if it was a fumble, they maybe score.
And then it was returned, but that was all semantic. That didn't happen. What I said as it happened was tie goes to the runner, meaning in baseball terms, meaning they'll probably just say he got in. If it's bang bang, they're going to default to crossing the goal line.
Yeah. And the goal line is a force field that goes up into infinity. Like the second a pebble of leather crosses, and that hopefully, in 2048, when we have the technology, I just hope we have like a laser force field.
Yeah. Like Tron.
And as soon as it feels leather across it, it just turns colors.
There's sort of a screenshot somebody put out with that, like a drawn sort of force field line right at, and you could see in that screenshot the tip of the ball with Arnold having both hands on it and having broken the force field. And then the ball kind of rotates out of his hands, but even then it's weird, but he's still got both hands on it. It's rolling. It's rolling in between his hands.
And when it's rolling, that's when the fumble starts. But if it's crossed the plane, it's not a fumble. And I
was so fascinated by this. As this review was happening, I was like, man, I wish we had the ACC review stuff so we could hear what was happening. Now, I did get
SEC
some
would
messages.
rather shroud it in secrecy, and now one of their 16 fan bases thinks there's a complete conspiracy against their team.
Of course.
It doesn't help. It doesn't help that after this, Kirby Smart is very clearly trying to call timeout.
Yeah. He was clapping, Andy. That's how he clapped,
he gaslit the referee, the officials into thinking he was clapping, and he didn't call timeout. And Georgia
like a 3-year-old in a high chair.
That's how we clap.
That's how we clap. I think it's hilarious.
That was insane. Clapping.
Yeah, that's
that
a
one.
Clap.
Probably is
what is the sound of two hands clapping?
The fumble probably isn't going to warrant a statement because from what I understand, everybody on the review agreed that it was a fumble. Apparently, which I don't really understand.
But for that,
so I don't think they'll have a statement there. They'll probably have a statement and maybe even a reprimand on the Kirby Smart timeout thing because it was very obvious that he was calling a timeout and then convinced the official that he wasn't. And it's just unbelievable.
I mentioned
Kirby Smart, by the way, trying to convince someone of something in a heated moment. I want that as a movie. We can dub whatever, we'll concoct different situations for him to be managing. Of course, they won't be football. It's sort of like when the G.I. Joe public service announcement when they got dubbed over with pork chop sandwiches.
Half the battle.
Yeah, I want that, but Kirby Smart explaining because the Kirby Smart timeout part. Yeah, he was calling timeout. The video of him.
Can you hear that clap, Andy? You hear that?
Absolutely.
Yeah, I can pick it up.
I'm doing the timeout clap.
Yeah, that's a
timeout clap.
Lovely
timeout clap.
But the video of him trying to explain to the official, no, I was just clapping. I couldn't have possibly called timeout.
He was emphatic too. I mean, he was he kept clapping. It was wild. Yeah, it was wild.
Right.
And then Hugh Freeze was just losing it, of course.
We could revel in the conspiracy theory that I proffered 2 episodes ago that if you remember, there was this giant rumor that the league had to come out and dispel that Hugh Freeze was being blackballed from getting back into the SEC. Do you guys remember that? So
they didn't really come out and dispel it so much as they let him get a job so he didn't sue them.
No, they didn't officially say anything, but of course they were telling people no, that's not true.
Oh,
and
no,
that was a lot of scuttle for a long time that he was somehow not going to be allowed in first as a coordinator. But so one could proffer that this is Greg Sankey's giant secret revenge, which would be very, very silly. What is not very silly? Yes, by the way, I am joking on that one. I do jab at Sankey a lot, but that there is no grand conspiracy against.
Do not believe that for 1 second.
Yeah,
yes.
no. But I do want it to make this show gets aggregated a lot, and so I do want that to be said to make it to an Auburn message board because it's fun. It's fun to light things on fire. There is one thing that is real, which is bad call. I think we all think we saw that ball across the plane, right?
Georgia I was interested in hearing you guys' take on it because, like, on my On3 show, we have live commenters, and there were people who were not Auburn fans and not Georgia fans who just watched the game who said, I thought it was a fumble. It looked like a fumble to me. And they're not trying to start stuff. They're just that's what they saw.
No, look, it was a fumble. That's fine. But here's what I'm trying to get at. Before that fumble, the University of Georgia had 22 yards.
Yeah.
Yes.
They finished with 291 yards.
Yes.
Bad things happen to good teams every Saturday. Momentum, while a trope in sports writing and something that we lean on as just probably one of our biggest cliches, is also a real thing that coaches talk about. It's hard to quantify and it's hard to qualify. But you saw an unraveling after that.
Yep.
The crowd was indignant. Look, they're lucky it was blown dead. It wasn't run back for a touchdown. The ensuing drive, I believe, ends in a field goal and puts Georgia on the board, right? Yeah.
Yep.
There was
It was a 10-point swing.
Yeah. But yes, if Auburn had continued to dominate the game the way it had, that play would have meant nothing.
And the reason why I want to spend time with that play, guys, is not because did it cross, did it not, what did they say? It's that it is so hard sometimes to create narrative out of a football game and say, this is the story we can tell you out of this. That play changed every bit of momentum and it never went back. Glenn Schumann was on his heels. The offense for Georgia looked terrible. The offensive line looked terrible. Things were not working. Stockton was under pressure. And then they didn't necessarily turn the offense around, but they bully balled their way into a win because Auburn became unglued. They became unsettled. I've never seen something that we've seen bad plays happen or bad officiating effects on a game. Auburn disappeared after that. That was it.
Yeah.
Yeah, it does seem to be like it affected more than the scoreboard, which the scoreboard is a very important part. So you think about 17-0 instead of that 10-3, and it's just a complete 10-point swing there. And they never.
But again, going back to what we said about the Indiana pick 6 against Oregon.
Yes,
they could have unraveled after that. They could have come unglued after that. Instead, they marched down the field and scored a touchdown. If Auburn had just scored another touchdown, maybe this game goes completely differently. Auburn and then the drive that Gunnar Stockton led them on late in the game, like that was more damaging to Auburn than the call because they just hogged the ball. They changed the tone and the flow of the game completely, and it looked like two different teams.
Can we do the PSA real fast on kneeling? Let's just kneel, guys. Or not kneeling. I'm sorry, sliding. Like if you're inside the opponent 5 and you're up, you don't need to Superman there, Gunner. I watched the Temple Navy game, which I'm sure you guys didn't like.
There were some guys in Vegas who appreciated Gunner's scoring, but yes, the correct football play is kneel or slide and then kneel,
which is what Northwestern did. It's what Temple should have done against Navy yesterday. There was Stockton. It wasn't, I guess, because the offense had fallen apart so badly for Auburn. It didn't look like Kirby was chastising him. I think he may have said something to him about it as he's running off after he Supermans in. Kirby grabs him, and now that was McElroy and McDonough. They were like debating whether Kirby was saying something to him or not.
Well,
but if he does slide there, the game's over.
The Keely Ringo interception in the national title game, Georgia versus Alabama. Keely Ringo does not need to bring that back for a touchdown. Right. And you see Kirby freaking out on the sideline because he's like, "Get down, get down."
Please God, yes.
But
get that off my back. Yeah,
yeah. So I mean, Kirby understands that situation really well, but it could have complicated things, and they're lucky it did not.
Ross, do you think, from like a reporter's perspective, the next time you go to like SEC meetings or you get like, do you think there will be any move towards adopting the ACC system? Because we've had several weeks of this now.
Unlikely, I would say.
Okay,
but I don't know. I mean, Big 12 did it, right? So the ACC and Big 12 have it.
I figured the SEC would be the last.
Pressure. Probably.
Yeah,
probably.
I don't see the harm in it. There will eventually be one in the ACC where they screw up the call. They screw up the replay call too,
or they disagree.
Yeah,
on the call, right? They disagree back and forth, kind of waiting for that to happen.
But see, I would appreciate that. And I think
the Auburn
most
fumble,
people
there was no disagreement, which is weird.
Yeah, I think most people appreciate the forthrightness.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Transparency. Who knew? That's why it's sort of the whole purpose of the fourth estate.
Yeah.
Yeah. But it's not the purpose of these leagues.
What the SEC is going to do with, which is very, to me, very, not the fumble, but the timeout situation. Like, you have a coach, right, running down the sideline, and let's just be honest, like, it's very clear that he, sort of bamboozled.
I would suspend the crew for letting a coach bully them into.
Yeah, I mean, the official's got to be at fault, and then I don't know. Is there something? Does somebody give a call to Mr. Kirby and say, "Look, we know you lied. We see it right there. Yeah. We can't have this. So here's your fine or reprimand or whatever." I don't know. Maybe,
but I would punish the officiating crew for that, because the white hat's job in that situation is to go and ride herd on that and say, no, you called timeout. You're getting assessed a timeout here.
Yeah.
And they didn't do that.
Fair. Yeah. And usually the league is good about issuing something maybe today, tomorrow.
Yeah. They have that SEC officiating Twitter feed. So I think that probably would be appropriate, where, and they don't announce what the discipline is, but it would be appropriate for them to announce, hey, we have reprimanded the crew for this too, because you got to handle it better than that.
Or it's a giant conspiracy from Greg Sankey specifically against Hugh Freeze and Auburn, because they're based in Birmingham and run by a cabal of Alabama boosters in an underground bunker. I'm just throwing this out.
Wait, I thought they were run by Tennessee boosters.
No, it's always been a tie.
Yeah, they're harvesting children's
remember the
blood.
Albert Means case? That was all Tennessee conspiracy.
Yes. And they're using seed oils to control the SEC. Okay, guys, look, do your research.
A lot of chemtrails.
Speaking of Alabama, Todd,
that was my perfect transition. Thanks.
Rolling along.
Take notes, Andy.
Rolling right into Missouri.
That was beautiful. Yes, things are much better in Tuscaloosa than they are in Auburn, because a very happy team returned to Tuscaloosa from Columbia, Missouri. Guys, Ty Simpson, I said this last week or maybe 2 weeks ago, but if my life was on the line, when 1 4th down, and if the team got a first down, I get to live, and if they didn't, I'm out. I want Ty Simpson as the quarterback.
I don't. I'm probably the least interested, or I just don't care about the Heisman at all. But I was kicking this idea around last night. Like, right now, we have a 1, and we don't even have a 2 or a 3. We have like a 4 and a 5 in terms of like a Heisman pick, because we've lost so many of those other marquee quarterbacks. He's amazing. Andy, I want to go back to what you framed this and talking about. All right, how do we get through like labeling Alabama and the transition coming out of the Florida State loss? And you said, do not give them their flowers for getting up for a major opponent. How do you handle Vanderbilt, Missouri? So, okay, now we're here.
Handled.
Feels like War Machine is maybe a little too much. Like, we're not back at a Saban standard, but it definitely feels like league front runner to me.
Oh, yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I would
Especially
feel comfortable calling.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I would feel comfortable calling them the favorite in the SEC, even though Ole Miss and Texas A&M are still undefeated. But I would feel comfortable calling Alabama the front runner. I am a little worried about what happened with Jam Miller at the end of the game, because I do feel like they are a little bit different offense with and without Jam Miller. But as long as they got Ty Simpson, I'm feeling pretty good about their chances against anybody.
I watched every play of Ole Miss yesterday. Dude, they are not in the same conversation.
Right. Ole Miss barely escapes Washington State. They're going to Athens to play Georgia next week.
Yeah.
We'll find out about Ole Miss next week.
Lane Kiffin nailed it. He said the red zone offense was as bad as the student section. This was really fast. Yeah, he said that after the game.
Wow.
Really fast.
Yeah, the student section was bad. Like a quarter full, a third full, maybe. If that.
I was in town in Oxford. I was speaking to the journalism department, and I stayed because of one of my former editors went to Wazoo, and I was going to show him the whole deal. And I could go for a while on the state of things. It's very typical Ole Miss in a non-football sense, and then on the field, it felt like I was back in college. It was like David Cutcliffe like farting away a Jefferson Pilot game. Trinidad Chambliss had probably one of his That was probably, as a group, as a single game, his worst passing effort. They were very sleepy. The lines didn't look good. Wazoo played their butts off. Kind of shocked to see them that flat. This was the Kentucky game last year that they lost to Mark Stoops. When Kentucky hits that 4th down pass, they end up upsetting them in Oxford. The silver lining in terms of like, there's Alabama. We could maybe talk about A&M, but down in the Oklahoma Ole Miss territory, they took that loss, if you will, like they did to Kentucky last year. And if they can pivot and look better against Georgia, we can talk about them maybe in a different way. The benefit is that you didn't actually lose this game, but this was the classic Lane Kiffin early game sleepy problem, and they looked absolutely terrible. I think Austin Simmons is done, by the way. Did you see the cryptic Instagram post? Dorm room poetry thing the night before the game. Chambliss had a lot of really bad passes to the point where the PA announcer in Oxford was saying like, tip pass, incomplete. They were not tip passes.
No.
And they never, you saw Simmons warm up a little bit and interact with the ones, but it was never an option apparently to go back to Austin Simmons.
It's such a strange situation because that was a good problem to have, and now there's always a chance it could devolve into a not good problem to have.
It seems like he's ready to look for another home, and he's done, and he's very hurt by the process.
Well, it's a very strange situation, and I feel bad for everyone involved in that situation because it's not anybody's fault that he got hurt and the guy came in and was awesome.
Yeah, it
just sort of happens sometimes.
The way it happened, yeah.
But great color matchup at the State Fair, Texas. It's always beautiful, always amazing, always the coolest atmosphere when Texas and Oklahoma get together and play in the Cotton Bowl. That was not what I expected out of that game.
Never is, Andy. It
never
is. But it's unbelievable. Expect the unexpected.
Yes. We could not prognosticate that performance specifically. And yet, we said multiple times, this is the game that produces the result you don't expect.
And it seems like, at least in the last 15 years, the result you don't expect is we think Oklahoma's going to win and Texas wins going away. There have been 3 instances of that in the last 15 years. And, I think what I found so interesting about this game is I think Arch Manning grew up some in this game because I also think the Texas offensive line did. They both got buried after they lost to Florida. And Arch was playing well, I would say 100% of that game. The Texas O-line started off very shaky against that Oklahoma pass rush, but Arch was doing some Houdini stuff, escaping, taking what would have been terribly negative plays, turning them into incomplete passes or kind of neutral plays, and then finding open receivers sometimes when he kept things alive. And then as the game went on, the Texas offensive line started to play better. In the second half, Steve Sarkisian said they determined they were going to run the ball with Trey Wisner. They figured out how to run the ball. And so Texas started to, I don't know if solve its issues, but manage its issues, whereas Oklahoma, which has not really had a running game outside John Mateer all year, continued to not really have a running game outside John Mateer all year. And then when they ran up against a team with really good DBs like Texas, it turns out Oklahoma's receivers aren't that great at getting open.
Well, and let's just be honest. Like, our boy Mateer had blood coming from his hand at some point in the third quarter, I think. I mean, clearly, he was not close to 100%, and not surprising 17 days after.
It did seem like some of those throws, Ross, that he's made before that didn't get picked, like the 50-50 sort of choices that he's made earlier on, those got picked. I know one was a deflection, but
he was throwing it up pretty frequently.
Yeah.
Whereas in other games, he was not throwing it up. He was targeting a lot better. I think it was a little bit of frustration because Texas was getting pressure. He was not able to escape as easily as he escaped against other teams. And he put the ball in danger quite a bit. It could have been picked off more than it was.
Yeah.
I don't think that the turnovers necessarily tell that story, though. I think I'll go back and double down on what Andy said. Because of the improved offensive line play, and also some of those passes from Arch were just simple. He got his first read. I'm not saying they simplify. We said simplify over and over again. Like they got it wasn't. No,
Steve Sarkisian called a much better game than he called against Florida. Against Florida, he called a lot of slow developing stuff. Against Texas, he got he called things that allowed Arch to get the ball out quickly, and Arch looked much
Absolutely.
more decisive.
From a play calling, but also an execution standpoint, I think they made their layups in this game, but they also put themselves in a position to make layups in a way that we have not seen, at least in league play.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think if you go look going forward, the Texas schedule is not terrible. They do have games that will challenge them. I think obviously Vanderbilt and Texas A&M, and Texas is not in a position where their schedule's so hard that they can go 9-3 and make the playoff. Like, they're going to have to win every game if they want to make the playoff. It's potentially doable. I'm not sure I would say it's the likeliest thing, but I don't know how ESPN does the math on all those playoff predictions, but if I were putting percentages on who's going to make the playoff, I would actually think Texas, which must win every game from here on out, has a higher percentage of making the playoff than Oklahoma, which faces an absolute nightmare gauntlet for 6 games and has to go 5-1.
I love the idea of Texas going into Lone Star as an underdog. That would be just an absolutely fantastic setup for that game.
Is that
you
in
may
Austin?
actually see it.
It's in Austin, isn't it?
I think, it was in College Station last year. So, going into a home Lone Star as an underdog, if A&M continues apace, that would be fantastic. A&M, by the way, I like watching him. Man, Colin Klein is like, he's the next head coach somewhere. I really like Reed. They are clicking. Everything looks really nice for them to go back to, whatever the price tag was and whatever you swallowed for Jimbo is, it's not that hard to stomach anymore.
Yeah, for them it wasn't a big price tag. There.
Yeah, they got. I mean, they can you go over there and kick a couple of oil derricks.
Somebody just told me a story about when they were at A&M a few years back, and there was a booster who was just like, "Hey, I forgot to make my contribution. I missed the deadline or whatever, something like that." And the AD was like, "Oh, it's fine. Like, we'll get just send whatever to me, when you get a chance." And literally right there, the booster got out the checkbook and wrote a $15 million check
to
the athletic director.
That's
stupid. Look, just stupid.
It's sitting there and checking. Like, it's not even a wire transfer.
Yeah, it's not. Yeah,
can you take a personal check?
There you go. 15.
You got to me pay my tax deductions, man. You got to keep your receipts.
Yeah, there you go.
But it's true. I mean, there's the story of the meeting where they're trying to debate whether they want to pay Kevin Sumlin's buyout, and it was one of those lump sum due within 60 days situations. They end up not deciding to do it at this point, but someone got up and was like, "I will write the check right now," and that is just how they roll at Texas A&M. But we've talked about this, we've joked about this. I think it's something supernatural, possibly. Mike Elko swears it isn't. All of that money has never been able to buy them what they want, which is sustained football relevancy. This feels different. Yeah. And I know that Kevin Sumlin had years where he also started 6-0, but Mike Elko feels like he's got this. I don't know how else to say it. I don't know how else to describe it. I've used the phrase adult in the room, but it's a very reassuring. When you hear Mike Elko talk, it is very reassuring. Like, I have a plan.
Yeah.
I know what we're doing. This is not a fluke.
I have a term for it. I can't use it on the air. I've used it on other shows. It's called FFC. And the second F stands for football and the C stands for coach. And what I mean by that is when you're an FFC, it's the antithesis of running the media narrative and being known for a style or known for a presence, or all those guys in the 2010s that were like these media darling AAC coaches. Mike Elko is the antithesis of that. He also knew the culture, which I think really is, I think is kind of maybe the core of his success. Yes. And he was well liked. He played buffer for Jimbo with a lot of people in A&M, in College Station, when Jimbo was hard to deal with. He was the coach that they would actually bring to particular events when Jimbo would blow everything off. He gets it, to your point, Andy, of just sort of it being hard to describe. But the football focus and the simplicity and the idea of not trying to find a figurehead or a politician is doing them wonders. It's also a good staff. Like, it's a good staff. They evaluate well.
Well, you mentioned Colin Klein. Like, what they've done to build this offense around Marcel Reed, because let's go back to last year. They end up having to play Marcel Reed because Connor Wigman gets hurt against Florida. They realize they maybe have something in Marcel Reed. Yeah. But Wigman comes back. They beat Missouri. And then they're losing to LSU. They have to do something. They have to make a change. They put Reed in and realize, all right, this is our guy from here on out. From that moment, they spent the offseason then building an offense around him that complemented him perfectly. The additions of Mario Craver and Casey Concepcion in the transfer portal, perfect for how because Marcel Reed is not DJ Lagway, the quarterback he played against last night. Like DJ Lagway, when DJ Lagway works out for NFL scouts, they will ooh and ah, and their jaws will drop. That will not happen with Marcel Reed. But what Marcel Reed is good at is short to intermediate range passes. He's very accurate. Yeah. If you have guys who can get open and then run after catching those passes,
which
Craver you have a very good offense. And
just
look
about
at this.
Better than
look
anybody.
at what they do.
Yeah. Craver, like they were so excited about him in the preseason, and obviously transfer from Mississippi State, and he has lived up to it. It's incredible. But you know what? Like we're talking about a lot about the offense. This is a crazy stat. So A&M has played 3 straight SEC games. Mississippi State, Texas A&M, or Mississippi State, Florida, and Auburn. Opponents have converted 2 of 36 third down or fourth down attempts. 2 of 36 in those 3 games. It's incredible third down defense. Like maybe we've never seen it before. Certainly never seen it before there.
Well, and that's, you go get Cassius Howell out of Bowling Green. Now he played for A&M last year, but he was behind Nick Scorton and some other very good players. But then you have guys like Torian York. Like this is a great defense that it was challenged by Texas A&M. Had probably its worst game of the year against Texas A&M. But look at what they did last night against Florida. Florida marches down the field, scores 2 quick touchdowns. It's 14-14. Elko goes, you know what? Okay, I trust that we can get pressure with 4 most of the time. I'm gonna put another guy back in coverage, and I'm only gonna rush 4 most of the time. Florida never did anything the rest of the night. That was the end. And so that's the stuff that Elko does. Like he's really good at figuring out what are his players good at, how does this matchup work, and they kind of felt each other out last night. Elko made the key adjustment. Billy Napier couldn't, and that's why Texas A&M won that game going away. And now we're talking about Billy Napier maybe not coaching Florida anymore, which we've been talking about for quite some time. Yes. But it did feel like that was it. Now, is that it today? We're recording this. It is currently like 9 a.m. Central Time. Nothing's happened. I've checked in Gainesville. Nothing has happened yet. I don't know if anything will happen or not. But they could do it. They could not do it. They have an open date after Mississippi State next week. That would be a more logical time. And this is where I will point out, and somebody pointed out to me last night, that the infamous Jimbo Fisher buyout, which keeps coming back up. Do y'all remember the game before he was fired? Do you remember what happened?
Oof, you refresh my memory. It's early.
They beat Mississippi State.
Yeah, that's right.
Oh, yeah.
It was actually a very convincing win.
It was.
Fairly easy for A&M, but they'd made the decision. It was time to do it.
Yeah,
and they did it.
Orgeron got fired off a win too, didn't he?
That's right.
He actually was fired before. They didn't let it get out. He beats Florida, and then they announced.
Well, I think A&M also obviously made the decision before that game against Mississippi State, and just like LSU made the decision before they upset Florida as well.
Yeah,
that's crazy.
So I think the Florida decision was probably made after the USF game. It's just a matter of finding the right time to do it.
What is the right time? Like, this is the question most of us are getting in like social media and mailbags and stuff. Like, why not South Florida? Why not to buy?
So I look at the decisions that have made so far this year, and they all seem to base on fear of empty seats. Like Virginia Tech fired Brent Pry when they did because they assumed nobody was going to come to the games if Brent Pry was still their coach.
Yes,
I think UCLA did the same.
Yeah, they had good attendance at Virginia Tech. That was a thing they touted the week after when they put Montgomery in.
Yeah, and I think the same thing happened at UCLA, where with Deshaun Foster, it looked like there was no hope, and so nobody was going to come. Now, I mean, it's UCLA. It's the Rose Bowl. They have a giant stadium and a very apathetic fan base generally.
Yeah,
but I bet there are going to be some people at the Rose Bowl their next home game because they're excited about what UCLA is doing right now. So I think for Florida, they've been mired in mediocrity so long. That fan base has wanted Billy Napier fired for the better part of 3 seasons now. I think if you tell them something new's coming, that they will respond well to that.
Okay.
They're just because they are getting nervous. They keep getting more and more nervous because these are the questions. Because I went to Florida, I live in Gainesville, so obviously I get these questions all the time.
Yeah.
Like, what if Scott Strickland wants to keep him?
Right.
Scott Strickland isn't stupid.
Well, he does. I'm sure he wants to keep him.
He would love for it to work,
yeah.
but it didn't work.
But,
and I think Scott is intelligent enough to know that, and will do what he has to do. But the fans don't get that, and nature abhors a vacuum, and fan bases abhor silence. Like they will just fill the gaps with whatever conspiracy theories. Like the message boards will be like, "See, they're going to keep him for another year." They're not. They're not going to keep him for another. I know they did it last year. It was weird last year. They made the decision to fire him and they changed their minds. I don't think they're changing their minds this year. It's going to happen. It's just a matter of when.
We all know, we all know. I mean, we probably know, us three and many people in the media industry, like what happens when a school starts to contemplate a coaching change and they get the message out to certain people in the industry, whether it's agents, coaching search people. And I mean, that message is out. It has been out for a few weeks now.
Oh, yeah.
That's why I said the USF game, because that's when it went out. It went out after the USF game. So it's coming. It's going to happen.
I think we could say that all of the major agencies and who represent the people that fans say, oh, what about this? Those people they don't waste their time at all. Those people plan accordingly, and they are planning for Florida to be open.
Well, and the other part of it is the guy that all the Florida fans want is Lane Kiffin. He's rep by CAA and Jimmy Sexton. Billy Napier's rep by CAA. His day-to-day guy is Ed Marinowitz, but they also, he's under the Jimmy Sexton umbrella. Yeah. So all of that can be transacted before you actually make any decisions. Yeah. You can at least get the wink, wink, nod, nod if somebody wants the job or doesn't want the job. But then obviously there are going to be other people who want the job. They'll try to get in there. And we don't know what's going to happen with Lane Kiffin. Lane Kiffin's got an undefeated team right now.
Yeah.
Technically.
Might be playing deep into December.
That's exactly right. So nobody knows what's going to happen after it happens. But I think you should feel fairly certain that it's going to happen. And then we'll see. But yeah, the timing of it remains a mystery. So by the time this show is released, there may be news or there may not. It may just go into the Mississippi State game and they do something after that because there's an open date. And that logistically
we got to
is
future-proof
the
these episodes. So you guys, it's crazy that Jimbo took the Wisconsin job. That was wild. Y'all.
Gerald Ford dead today at 83, torn apart by a pack of walls. One of the greatest Saturday Night Live skits ever. Tom Brokaw pre-records the news. It's
trying to think if there's anything else we could do there in that regard. Yeah, Wisconsin, Florida.
The Wisconsin job, I think you have to do because we haven't really delved into it much. This may be a Tuesday episode topic because I do wonder if something has to happen like right now before the saddest game ever when Ohio State comes to Madison.
Just so crazy. Yeah. Dan Mullen's going back to Florida. UNLV. That's wild.
Dan Mullen undefeated.
Yeah, undefeated UNLV. That's why
undefeated Dan Mullen.
And there's your Mountain West Minute.
Listen, that. Georgia Tech undefeated 6-0.
Brent Key, baby.
BYU double overtime at like 2:00 in the morning. Undefeated 6-0. How about that?
Yeah. Oh, one more thing. You mentioned BYU beating Arizona. Big win in the Big 12. I'd like to talk about this week, guys. Can I put a stake in the ground for a potential topic for Tuesday or Thursday?
Sure.
Texas Tech has gotten exactly what it wanted out of this roster. And they have separated from the Big 12.
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
Yep.
It's coming.
They are a wagon.
Yeah, that might be awesome. If you had to start cementing in a playoff name, I think that's the safest bet of everybody right now. Them in Ohio State
and Indiana.
Huh?
Hoosiers.
Because they're for real. My team is on the floor. Oh, wait.
Hoosiers.
My team is on the field.
Maybe Miami. And then in the SEC, I have no idea.
No, just stuff. Just stuff.
All
Those other leagues ain't played nobody, Paul.
Ross
Gentlemen.
got to get to urgent care.
Yeah, I got to get
Yes, Ross, get better. Ross will be healed by the time you see him on
I
Tuesday.
hope so.
faith healer. Just put hands.
Boom. Yeah, I want you to go to a faith healer, Ross. I want to see it. You get up on stage, you faint, all of a sudden you'll feel better. It'll be perfect. We'll film it for the show.
Great. Yeah.
You can watch Ross get healed by a faith healer on Tuesday on the College Football Inquirer. We will talk to you then.